This is a little test that I did to look at the relationship between light meter readings and the ISO ratings in the A7s, just to see if they still correlate at these really high ASA ISO levels that the A7s is capable of. So this was shot S-Log2 just with the LCA lookup table applied, and shot on the 24 to 70 millimeter Zeiss lens, which is wide open at f4. So at f4, I'm at 160,000 ASA to get this exposure. And looking at that there, I think that's a really good base exposure to start grading from. So in answer to that original question, I think they do still correlate very accurately. Something that's a little bit surprising, given that this is a highly compressed 8-bit recording, is I would expect to be seeing some banding and significant blocking occurring in these kind of mid-grey areas of the car there. I'm not seeing any of that on screen with the lookup table applied. What really surprised me, though, is when I panned around to here. Now, that driveway is on an incident reading in the middle of the driveway about 6 stops overexposed, which I would expect on any camera like this to be irretrievable. But just pulling that back with the printer light control only on Resolve 11 here, you can see that when we pull that back about 6 stops, we end up with something that's pretty watchable. Some blown out highlights there, which are way over. But that's basically a pretty watchable recording there at 6 stops over. We can even pull a little bit more detail out of those shadows just using the lift control there. And it's quite malleable. It's kind of behaving a lot more like film than I would have expected from a camera anywhere near this sort of range. I certainly wouldn't recommend going out and shooting stuff 6 stops over and expecting it to work without some pretty thorough testing, because this is a very particular circumstance. I don't know whether this would still hold true at lower ISO ratings. It certainly makes sense that the camera is seeing a lot more detail in the highlights as you increase the ISO. But it's still really surprising that you're able to retrieve that from such a compressed format, particularly in 8-bit. So pretty impressive all round.